family. Welcome to today's podcast. Today's guest has helped hundreds, possibly even thousands of women and men get educated on what it means to be informed about their most precious possession, their bodies. This kind and caring woman comes armed with real information and real facts, all from years of dedicated research and study. With her knowledge and expertise in the world of personal training and transformation through genetics, through coding, science, biology, and much, much more, Hannah Louise is revolutionary in her ability to coach and mentor anyone out of the vicious cycle of weight gain and then weight loss and then weight gain, as well as implementing tested methods and techniques to improve stress and anxiety through her individually created programs. This woman is a real firecracker. In Hannah's words, a lot of people have a basic understanding about their body, and for the most part, they can see the results of their diet and exercise. But there was something very important missing out there in the industry of wellness, health, and fitness. There was a huge gap in the world of fitness between coaches helping a person to sustain themselves weight-wise and fitness-wise, also emotionally, spiritually, and even harmoniously. It was evident statistically that most people who hired a so-called trainer couldn't keep their goals long-term. I've had so many people come to me describing how they felt like they had tried it all, and that they had also then given up. Their up and down yo-yo weight journey was just how it was. This is what they expressed to me. However, when under my care they began to see consistency, they also professed that their deeper knowing knew that something was wrong and that there should be an answer to their problems. And that knowing was proven right. I always knew there was something very special about Hannah. From the first time we collided over Instagram, yes, that was sometimes 1, 2, 3. I always knew there was something very special about Hannah. From the first time we collided over Instagram, yes, that's sometimes fickle, but at other times wonderful platform for finding similar souls and starseed families, we just hit it off straight away. To know Hannah is to know she is super kind, super loving, funny, intelligent, courageous, resilient, and well seasoned. Yes, there's that word again. That word I use to mainly describe women of domestic violence. But more than that, I use it to describe a woman who knows how to stand on her own 2 feet, be in her own power and her own light. It's rather interesting how you can gather your family over the internet just as someone is being born to you through blood. Friends are a choice, and just knowing that makes it so very extra special. I admire and respect Hannah immensely and all the work that she does for humanity. It's because of women like Hannah who spend years behind the scenes creating fitness and health programs backed by real science that she and HL Genetic Coaching has emerged as the life-changing game changer for the way in which men and women age, or more appropriately, don't age prematurely. It's because of how Hannah explains the secrets of how we need to interact with our bodies and how we can develop sound systems of high productivity and longevity. All we need to know is what to do. There's that saying again, you only know what you know. And today's podcast is all about us giving Hannah the Hotbox platform to speak out on and speak up about what she knows, how she lives, and how she has such a huge success rate when it comes to helping people achieve the best body they could possibly have inside and out and keep it. So get comfy or get running if that is how you listen to your podcasts. Whatever you do, stay with me as I welcome Hannah Louise onto today's show. No, be quiet. No, don't bark. No. No. Tino. Hi, Hannah. See if I can hear you. Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah, I just
Okay.
wanted to check the sound. Thanks. Okay, Pearl. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, great.
Three,
3,
4,
4,
5.
5.
Hannah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear
Yeah,
you.
I can hear you.
Oh, you can hear me. Okay, great. Because I'm texting
Yep.
you. Okay, so
Yep.
because the producers are the other side of the world,
Yep.
when we
Yep.
talk, like I always allow you to talk and finish on your own, and then I'll interject because what she does is she mutes us between talking to each other to keep it crystal clear.
Okay.
Okay.
So interacting backwards and forwards really quickly doesn't really happen, which is easier. So like when I talk to you and you answer however you want, I'll just wait till you finish talking.
Okay,
And
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, and just give it a minute before it comes to you. Like I've got to give it a minute when it comes to me. Just a little minute. You can see the little mute will come up the top when you're unmuted and muted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it is
echoing and
it's actually
really
hard to talk.
hard to talk.
Yeah, I think that's why she mutes you. You know how we're talking together now, backwards and
Yeah.
forwards,
Yeah.
and we're online at the same. That's why she'll mute you when I'm talking and vice versa.
So I won't
hear myself
because it's
Yeah, it won't be echoing when I'm not able
Yeah.
to talk
Yeah.
to you at the same time. Yeah, that's an overseas issue. So
okay.
Okay.
it works.
worries.
I'm doing mindful of mute and unmute. There you go.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, okay. That. Yep.
Oh no.
Oh no, it's still echoing.
It's really bad because
It won't.
I won't flow
If I can't.
Yeah, I know.
It's like me talking
over
over
myself.
Just let Pearl try and fix that.
Yeah.
Do
Yeah,
you
sure.
have headphones in or a headset?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got headphones in.
Okay, I
Try it without.
yeah, I never use them. It's always an echo. Okay.
Sorry, I had to shut the. It's still echoing.
Hi. So it's still echoing. We need to do the last one. When I will be staying right back, and then I'll do the mute because I'm also echoing.
Hannah says, can you hear me or not?
Yeah, I can hear
Yeah,
you.
I can hear you.
Oh, okay. So, Pearl, if you can hear me, Hannah says she still has an echo, which is distractive to her when she's answering questions. So, I've just asked her to take her headphones off or earpods. If you take me off the screen, Pearl, and yourself, can we sound check Hannah without anyone else on live with her headphones off? I want to see if she has an echo then.
I still
hear her
talk
her
and
and
earphones. So what I'm going to do
is
so I'll remove
myself
Oh,
Here.
yours?
Here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're going to do this. Would that be okay?
Would that be okay?
Yeah,
I will
be switching here.
yeah,
Just
Last time.
mute and
Mute
unmute.
and unmute.
yeah.
So
We
when
When Lisa talking,
I'll mute
her phone,
and then
and
Hannah
then
will,
Hannah will,
and then we'll
and then
have
we'll have,
Hannah will stop
stop talking up.
So just alternate.
Alternate.
I can't
I
even
can't
hear
even hear
you.
what you're saying.
Yeah,
Because it's echoing
So bad.
Yeah,
so
it-
bad.
So I don't even know what's going on now.
she can't hear Pearl because she can hear us, right? So she's in the USA, so that's going to be weird. But what I'm concerned about is when no one is in here in the show and it's just you, me, backwards and forwards. I just want to make sure you don't have an echo when you're just you
Yeah.
connected.
And
Do you have
And
an
it's still there.
Do you have an echo now when you're talking to me now? Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
So I'm going to tell you what. Listen, we can always cut parts of the show out. We can. So
Yeah.
I'll tell Pearl to do the countdown, but when we go in, if you still have an echo when I'm muted and when you're not muted, I want you to just tell me like live. It doesn't matter. We can always cut it out. Do you know what I'm saying?
sorry,
Sorry, my brain's
Podcast.
I'm sorry.
I'll just
to
refrain from.
But
But I will be doing
then I
then
mute
unmute your back
so that
so we can hear
both
both
loud
loud
and
and clear.
Just
Okay.
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 Okay, Hannah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's just do it. And I'm going to do you a sound check even when we're in the show because it doesn't matter. It can be cut off. It can be cut out.
What do you mean?
What do you mean? Yeah, it's
Talk?
talk. Like,
Yeah. And I'm going to ask you if you can hear me okay. And then she'll mute me and then you'll talk. So I just want to know if you have an echo when you're talking, even when we're filming in the show. It won't matter. We can cut it out.
Yeah. I get that. But as I say, it's just more, it's really actually, it's stopped now. It's stopped
echoing.
No. No, it's actually just really bad to flow talk with it because it's just coming at me. It's like someone's talking over me. But then actually it's cutting out now. Like it's not there now and then it comes back. It's weird. It's gone away now.
Here interacting with you and there's no mic cut. So when there's a mic cut on me, yeah, like you can't talk over each other and you'll have to wait till each other finishes, but you have to do that with anyone that's overseas because there's a time lapse, remember?
Talking over myself and then it ruins what I'm saying. Do you know what I mean? It's okay. We can do it if it sucks. I think it's okay. It's stopped now.
It won't be as bad. Let's just try it. morning, Hannah. Okay. So G, just chill. We can cut anything out. Can you hear Hannah, Pearl? So as long as your mic is turned on, Hannah, leave it permanently on because Pearl turns it on and off her end. Oh, she said she can't unmute your mic.
I've unmuted it.
So, Pearl, can you go back to mute and unmute? Oh, what fun. Good morning. Okay. Okay, Pearl. Thanks very much. Yeah, we can cut all that's fine. So good morning. Let's welcome Hannah Louise onto today's show. We are working with a few technical difficulties because we're recording from Queensland, Australia, Sydney, Australia, and overseas in the USA. So let's hope for the best, and I welcome Hannah Louise onto our show. Good morning, Hannah.
Good morning. Thanks for having me on.
Well, yeah, I had to clear my throat there because it's very early for me. I'm a night owl. I think you are too, Hannah. I'm like really struggle to get up early in the morning, and I have this little ritual where I don't talk for about an hour, which is, you know, like forceful talking really, but it's you on the show, so I'm happy to have you here. So I've given you a little introduction. Well, not so little. It's quite long because you're a woman who does 1,000 things. They're all like married up together and they all have a really amazing purpose. And I'm like, I've described who I think you are and your credentials and everything else. But I do start off with a big question to you today, because what we think of each other and what we think of ourselves are two completely different things. So if I was to ask you a question, Hannah, and I know you're privy to what this question is going to be, but who is Hannah Louise? How would you describe yourself?
Yeah, it's always a fun question, isn't it? Having to describe who you are from your own perspective. And I appreciate your introduction. It was spot on. So thank you. Yeah, look, I'm a driven, genuine, caring human being, and I have a big heart and a fierce nature. So I'm here to use all that drive and actually, you know, help others with their health and well-being, because for me, I know that my journey, it was so important to have those foundations, and it's, I think, paramount for everyone. So I truly believe that we need to live by our true values. My top values are health and well-being, beauty, and sales and delivery, which sounds kind of funny, but it's something that I've put together to, I guess, put my purpose out into the world. So yeah, I'm just someone, I think we just have to live in true integrity and alignment. So that's who I am.
I know, I love how you waited there because we got to mute mics between each other, which is a bit of a challenge, isn't it? And I love being authentic. So I'm like, this is my show. I like to keep things super casual, like have some kind of an idea about what we're going to talk about is really important. But I'm a just go with it kind of girl. Like I had a past life, like many of us have, where we've coupled up with there are life lessons we learn when we couple up with certain, you know, people in our lives, partners and what have you. And I think we learn a lot from that. And I was talking to someone the other day about not everything is a mistake, a disaster, because it just brings us forward into who we are today and what we're learning today. So being super casual and floating and not making too many plans, like even booking podcasts for me is a lot, because I like to decide on each day and every day what I'm doing. I don't really like to stick to commitment for studying, yes, but commitment to other people, not so much. But I have you on because I think we're in sync with that. Like when we chat about, so are all my other ladies that I have on my podcast. I'm just going to run off to my teepee now. I'm just going to, run up here and do this and that, and I'll be back. And you've got to have those girlfriends and friends in your arena that realize you might come from a background, that's been a little bit stressful, or you've had some, trauma, which has led to some PTSD. So many of my girls around me are very aware of what that is and how we need to interact with each other, because there's a special tenderness that needs to come towards your fellow sisters who have been through things. I love you for your passion, your authenticity. I mean, you're a very attractive looking girl, super popular. I know that you do, like me, your little insular hiding away, regrouping, regrounding, and then you come out with all guns blazing. So it makes me go cold. I look at that and I think the power of the woman to sit in her own soul and energy and realize when she needs to be insular. And I want to ask you about that, because I spoke to my last guest. She was going off to waterfalls. It was doing this, it was doing that. What do you do, Hannah, when you're starting to feel overwhelmed, a little bit stressed? I will get back to your business, but I'm really interested to know, what are your tools? What's your toolkit for your sanity and keeping healthy?
Yeah, look, it's such a great question. And I'm actually grateful you've asked at a time where I'm actually really practicing what I preach on this. As you know, like, I'm in a hibernation. Even wearing a t-shirt, as you can see, is not really my jam, but I'm repairing my adrenals and body and a few things, and I'm human and I'm a health coach. So just shows that you live by example. And where I'll tie that into what I actually use, I think, for me, obviously, it's all about, like, if we are in stress, trauma, whatever level, whether it's micro to macro, we're in our sympathetic nervous system, and that chronically will then, have ill effects on us. And for me, I did a lot of the more holistic, I guess, woo-woo kind of protocols in my late 20s, but now in my 40s, having been so obsessed with biology and personal development and integrating all of this, and being so blessed to come across the modality that is in my business model, but is actually my biggest passion in life, what I kind of learned through that was, obviously we get what we focus on. So, like, we do need times where we lean in. Like you said, you can't bypass the trauma. You can't escape the feelings. Like, you have to feel, deal, and heal. But we also don't have to be going and drinking and eating Maccas, and not that there's anything wrong with any of that, but we don't have to be doing things that actually further put our well-being into a distressed state. So for me, health and well-being is number one, and it's also my number one value. And you'll hear me talk values a lot, because I think when you're living in your values, you become in your executive center. So you can actually, in your brain, actually be in the things that light you up. So what I've learned from even my DNA type, and then just jumping back to you being a flow girl and a dynamic in the moment, that I think is the pocket rocket genetics, without going again too much into something people don't understand. But I've always said you and I are similar. So some of that is actually genetic. It's based on hormones. So I know that for me, sitting in something too long without movement, for example, is going to distress me. So meditation is beautiful, but if I go for a walk or a run and dissipate those hormones in my genetics, I'll dial down the stress better than if I'm trying to do what some other genetic type might actually be more naturally inclined to do. So it ties me back into the answer to that question is, I have an amazing tool that literally tells me what my genetics are doing in real time. So how the genes are expressing under a stress or trauma. For me, it'll be extra weight, which has knock-on effects. And I will be able to use the profiling to actually focus on the genes I would rather dial up. So when we're in stress, I think of it as we're in a seesaw, right? So if stress is up, you can't be thriving. You're just in survival. If you learn how to dial up your genetics from what they need psychologically, what movement they need, what kind of connections are best for them, what's their happy hormone in their body type, you can actually dial down the stress by dialing up and focusing on the good genetics. So you know how some of us like time on our own, and some of us are better when we connect with others, or So I know personally, and I'll just bring it back to kind of answering for me. For me, it's oxytocin. So I need safe connections. So when I'm low, I naturally don't trust people, which is what oxytocin is about. And so I need to bond with people like yourself behind the scenes, a little less extrovertedly. That'll keep me safe and my oxytocin up enough that I won't deplete it further. And that's a hack for me. That one's probably my number one, because in my younger years, when I was going through stuff, I'd retract, need oxytocin, but be depleting it. And I'd actually get depressed, and now I can use my DNA to turn up that hormone and connect safely, or go get a massage, or use that happy hormone that's my number one genetic need of safety, and use it. So again, this might be above people's heads, but so breath work's great for people. But as I said, for me, I get better when I'm in a sympathetic, grounded, walking kind of zone than sitting down in my head, because the adrenaline will be further stressing me out. So I just use my gene type protocols that turn up my DNA. And then I'll do a lot of things personally separate to that. I like prayer. I like meditation. I like to, have fun. Just go to nature. For me, fun is the gym. It's, coffee girl dates, it's going to dinner in a nice, cute dress, and it's driving to Byron Bay and just having a beautiful adventure, and really simple, basic things. So I just go back to those, and it dials down, the stress enough that you can deal with it without it being just overwhelming to your system. So I hope that answers that, even though it's a long-winded one.
I am trying to remember everything I want to say, because we start talking that I think I've got to go to the trust thing. I think I've got to go there, and trusting others, and then self-trust. So we can't trust others unless we trust ourselves. When we have moved, this is where I'm going to go with this, when we've moved boundary fences, and we have allowed certain things to happen to us, we've not defended ourselves, we've not removed ourselves from certain situations. Oh my God, I can just remember how I felt making allowances for people, especially my ex-husband and mother of 4 kids. I'm like, well, ordinarily, if I was just dating this person, I wouldn't have allowed this to happen. If I wasn't living with this person, I wouldn't allow this to happen. And you've really got to pick your battles, and you get so confused. And we'll get to narcissistic behaviors and everything else with people, but we've got to stick on ourselves right now. I'm focused on myself and yourself and our fellow listeners, and how we utilize nature as our tools, and how we get to a point where we can move forward and stop repeating bad behaviors and bad decision making, everything else, and really comes back to how firm are you on your boundaries? And that doesn't mean you're rigid in a relationship and you can't work with someone on the everyday, grievances and issues that you might have in a partnership or friendships or whatever. But I was always someone who would make up. It's okay. We'll fix this. We'll do this. We'll do that. I'll put up with that from a friend, or that friend overstepped a boundary. But you know what? Fuck it. Seriously. And I really don't swear that much, but I got to a point where I was losing myself, and listening to you speak about, and I don't know as much as you do about all this genetic coding and everything else. I'm learning off you, and I watch your videos and everything else, but it just makes sense. And I love how it makes not just common sense or psychological sense, mental, it's everything. It's spiritual sense, it's everything all intertwined, and that's what we are. That's what kind of human beings we are, and that's why I love your program. And your program is teaching people self-respect, because without self-respect and putting yourself first, you really, I don't feel, can enter into a program. You're allowing people to make a conscious decision to put themselves first in order to heal themselves. Then you're giving them the tools they need to be able to be the healthiest person they can be. So I've learned everything that I've learned, personal fitness, this, all work in psychology and everything else. But where you're coming from with the genetic side of things really makes sense to me, which is why I've got you on the show today, and I love it. And the forms of meditation and everything else. So if I was going to, because I'm curious, you've touched on a little bit about this genetic coding. I'm interested to know, and this could be a silly question, but I don't know. I'm a little bit green. When we get into that kind of thing, how many different body types are there? I mean, you were talking about stress and putting on weight. I've had, throughout our lifetime, when we grow and we become older and we change age gaps, like I'm 55 now, I'm classified as a senior citizen, but that's not going to wash with me. In stressful times now, I tend to, not a lot, but put on a little bit of weight. Back in the day when I was younger, I'd lose it all and be an anorexic stick. So things change at certain age groups, especially for women. So I'm seeing that. But if I was to ask you about this genetic coding in more detail, how many different body types do we have? What are we looking at? What's a? I want to go deep. This is the Hotbox. I want to go right in. I want to know, Hannah, how many body types? What are we looking at? I want you to go right into the heart and core of what we're looking at here for people.
Absolutely. Great question. So many things I want to answer. Firstly, I want to say most beautiful 55-year-old inside out I've ever seen. Such aspiration to be like you. So take the compliment and receive that. You look, talking about age, and I'm 42 and things do change. That's what we call in genetic world your phenotype. So when you were 3, you're going to be different to 43. We can tell that. We can also see visually we all have different shapes and sizes. Like, it's just obvious to look around. So in our company, or I guess our profiling system that our sort of genetic team have used the science for, what they've done is trademarked 6 different body types, because most people will fall into these categories, and where they fit into that category fits into a circle. There's a number that they'll become on that circle. And it's just to say, like, your predisposition is a hormone that holds, fat in this area, or, those kind of things. So I'm from a bodybuilding kind of fitness background like you are. And, I don't work anything outside my scope, but some people may or may not know on here, about the ectomorph, endomorph, mesomorph kind of somatotypes. We have a science where the system has come up with using some of those sciences with some other genetic science to correlate to 6 different body types. And usually I've profiled hundreds of people, and I've had access to watching other coaches, doctors, naturopaths in our community that are running their own business using this modality also profile, thousands of clients, and it's so accurate, and when you touched on the weight aspect, obviously we look at some people and under stress, their nervous system gets dominant and they'll lose weight. I'm actually a combination. So I've got a pattern, and it's from a childhood trauma as well, because the nervous system remembers, where I will go lean and I'll go into fight or flight, but I'll go so far that the stress will go into that cortisol, and then I'll have a rebound. And that's actually where I'm sitting right now. It's a pattern that happens every 4 to 5 to 6 years. And it's a pattern that I'm working on the nervous system element. So that's a whole nother conversation. That's like somatic work to clean that out. But it's important, because when I go back to what you said about how this speaks to you, every time I profile someone, it's almost like I'm talking to their inbuilt instincts, which is their nervous system, which is what you're made up of. So how your body grows in the womb is determined by, the environment that your mother is like feeding you, I guess, what's going on. It's all a genetic expression. So that's handed down through your genetics from your parents. And there's a whole, conversation on that. But for the average layman kind of understanding, you then will have, a certain embryonic development. So, when you develop in the embryo and you'll come out and, it's like some of us are 6'5", and that's not going to change, right? So that 6'5" person has a cascade of hormones that their whole life are kind of going to be in a certain direction. So like I've said before, we've got little pocket rockets with shorter femurs. So in our growing years, we're higher in testosterone conversion. So we're the little masculine females that need to move and roam. And then there's someone else who has, a dominance elsewhere, and they'll be more kind of mind driven because their nervous system had a dominance in their growth. So this is where that oxytocin and the happy hormones. So basically, like, you've got this body type that we've trademarked. So I'll just talk in our terms. So it's just educational for like not going into like comments about DNA and in-depth stuff on that. We've got 6 body types. In those 6 body types, there's a dominant hormone that your body has developed, and it will be your individual happy hormones. So if it's oxytocin, connection is going to be high there. So if you have negative connection, you're going to have negative effects. But if you dial it up in a positive way, you'll be flying and happy and everything will be flowing, right? If you are a serotonin dominant person, you might enjoy pleasure and want to avoid pain, and you need stability. And that's a calming, slow, totally opposite to the adrenal and testosterone hormones. So this is why, hey, your mother is like slow and detailed and it frustrates you because you're quick and dynamic, or your partner's that and you're not. And it becomes like the predisposition of how the brain genetics are, the behavioral genetics, the movement genetics. Some people are slow and steady. Some people are fast and hit orientated. And these are the reasons why. It goes back to, what best foods, what best timing of activities, what best kind of connections. So we have 6 body types, and I'm pretty sure that anytime I've ever profiled anyone, they're like, wow, this profile is phenomenal, explains me as a personality. But yeah, we did absolutely 0 psychological questions, all based on how your genes are expressing, because the data tells what dopamine's doing or serotonin's expressing or all of these things. So I hope that answered it enough. And then to the age factor, one thing I do want to put in there is, as we age as women coming into peri and menopause, the cortisol, let's put it like this, if we're up until before we hit that sort of late 30s-ish age, usually, we will be able to handle stress, aka cortisol, 8 out of 10. As those progesterone and estrogen hormones deplete, which is what's happening, we will be less able to cope with stress, which means when you get stress, which life is happening and aging and all these things, you will definitely have less of a response. And then things like, the midsection fat will start, and, you'll hold fat in different ways, but you still predominantly will have the shape of your body type. It'll just be adding these things to it. So as I said, like a lean, skinny person might get more anxious and still put on a little bit of belly fat, but not put on as much weight as another body that has had a predisposition to holding weight. And one further step on that is there's 3 body types that are, it's all from the evolutionary famine kind of DNA. So in a famine, there are certain body types that, to look after others, they gave their food away. So their body kind of adapted to hold weight. So there's 3 body types from your DNA that can actually, like under stress, literally slow down the metabolism, decrease movement, up your cravings, fight you to keep weight on because it's looking to save you. So I've just gone through, as I said, a PTSD. And so I've gone into fight or flight, gone too far. I went down to 50 kilos, and then I've come back up to my high set point, but I'm utilizing it because I have skills and knowledge, and I'm building muscle. And the more muscle we have in the female period of menopause, the studies are proving that the better your metabolism, which is aka more muscle and fired up, and losing body fat instead of weight loss, you will have a better experience with your hormones. Like, women are actually turning back off menopause by having a high metabolism. It's quite phenomenal. And I think coupling your genetic knowledge with like just thermodynamics and science that's based around a strong metabolism, you can really win the anti-aging fight. So there's my insight.
Wow, that's a lot, Hannah. But I did digest it. I did take it all in, and it's a great conversation. I will say that what you're doing business-wise and with all your knowledge and everything else, from a sex therapist point of view and my counselling of people, couples, women and men, that what you're doing is very complementary to what I do. So I can't really go and counsel a couple or do A, B, C, and D and get any kind of, so I understood a little bit about what you do before this, and it's interesting because having not studied what you studied and understand it, there is that innate, this makes sense, this speaks to me, this talks to me. So as a therapist, I can't work with anyone who's not open-minded to taking on board more information or even listening to what it is that you do. The more you know yourself, the more you genetically understand your DNA and everything else, the more able you are to fix your everyday relationships. And also, I think as we ebb and flow and evolve and learn things about ourselves, we can begin to choose more suitable relationships for ourselves. So if we're living with someone who is, they say opposites attract. I agree, and I also disagree a little bit. I mean, you can become a little bit agitated or feeling uneasy yourself in the company of somebody else that's resonating completely differently to you. How can you have a great coupling and a great relationship aside from all the narcissistic and sociopathic behaviors? And I haven't looked into that, regenetic coding, but probably that exists. You could probably look at these people and go, wow, this happened. And then we had the conversation about what environment were you in when you were conceived? What environment were you in when your mother was pregnant? How do these people come about? Because then we've got personality types as well. So we've got the DNA side of things, we've got the personality side of things that you study in psychology. Menopause is interesting, and you touched on that. And I know that when I think about menopause, women become a lot more assertive in menopause. So when their genetic coding is becoming aware to them, even prior to doing a course, say, or a program with you, I do know as a woman of 55 that we do put up with less shit. So I think there's something really interesting happening to the body where we want to have more control of our lives and what we're doing and where we're going. And this is why I love to mentor the younger women. And having someone like you who's really awake, really educated and knowledgeable in this, I think this collective of women working together for the greater good of humanity is such an amazing thing. I'm looking at that, and I'm blessed to have met you, because we can bounce probably clients off each other. I mean, you want to come to me and you want help, but you're way back here and you need to do A, B, C, and D. And we've got nutrition and everything else. I mean, you can't heal and have a happy marriage if you're ingesting garbage or you're thinking bad thoughts. So I think all these different areas of women, I mean, I have EGG, which is Empowered Girls Group. I have my motorbike group. I love getting all these women together, and like yourself, to have these discussions so women and men too can listen to our conversations and go, wow, I never thought about that before. I never thought that what I'm ingesting, how I'm acting, how I'm behaving is going against my DNA coding and my genetic coding, and therefore no wonder my life is in turmoil. No, look, I'm going cold, Hannah. You know how you go cold when you speak the truth, 2 words. So I think it's super amazing what you're doing. In this podcast, I do have to pull it back now that you've explained all that to us, which is fantastic. So if anyone wants to reach out to you, and I'll give you a plug at the end of the program, they can definitely jump online, get you, hire your services. I am now going to dive into the darkness. We all grow and learn from our experiences, and we've had some pretty shit ones where you can have long ones and short ones. What we want to do is we can't avoid our lessons. We can't avoid coming into contact with people that teach our lessons. So I find that living in gratitude for having learnt that lesson, as shit as it is, whether it's cost us, or me, my house, or financial loss, or we've even been abused, and all the rest of it. It's not ideal. It's not great. It happened. Shit happens. Understand and learn those red flags. Read and understand the person's genetic coding. Listen to what it is they're saying. Run a country mile if they're really, really not wanting to learn or hear anything. So from a psychological standpoint, through counselling with someone like me or through genetic coding, once given all those tools, there's a particular type of person that won't ever change or just can't. I'm wondering if that comes from genetic coding DNA that's already there, and we probably can't answer that question. That probably takes like a lot of years of intensive study beyond, you and I, but I'm just wondering, and we shouldn't really care what makes a narcissist or a sociopath. The only way we should care is to alleviate the problem. But unfortunately, as you can see in today's world, we are not alleviating the problem of domestic violence. Narcissistic behaviors and personalities, they exist. These people are going to learn on someone, and it's horrible to think that if they're not learning on you, they're learning on someone else. I mean, I'm an advocate for women, so I like to create a paper trail, or the paper trail that perpetrator has created. I like to put it up in lights. I mean, hence I wrote my memoir, I'm Not Backwards in Coming Forward. If we want to help women not even get into this in the first place, we'll educate them on what's this person's personality, what are the red flags, what can you do, how can you get out or not get fully in without becoming a paranoid schizophrenic, if you don't mind me using those words in that way. I don't mean to, abuse those words. But we have to be more vigilant as women. I have women every day texting and calling me, is this a red flag? Is that a red flag? Is that bad? And I'm like, okay, so the best way to think of it is think of those things happening to yourself when I'm advising people. So sometimes it can be a bit grey. And when I look at it and think, shit, would I like that to happen to me? I.e. my sister at the moment is constantly texting me, and a couple of other ladies. Is this a red flag? Is this a red flag? We need to not really think about the red flags and think about the feeling of what it feels like with that person, because our feelings are telling us that something's wrong. Our gut is telling us, back to the DNA, the genetics in our gut. I take everything in the gut. So when my gut starts to play up, that's my warning sign. That's my warning. That's my code. That's my alarm going off, and I go from that. So, Hannah, I know that you've had your life experiences with, trauma and things to do with relationships. I don't want to get into it too much with you, but I do have some women listening to my show that are currently in women's shelters right now as we speak, and they are hanging on to these podcasts like crazy. They want to hear that this woman, i.e. you and me, who are successful and doing all these things, we're all human. Even though we're star seeds having a human experience, we're all human. And we need to be a little bit vulnerable and a little bit open. We are authentic to let these women know, you know what, hey, this happened to me. This is what I've been through, without being specific, of course. And then maybe giving some ideas as how to stay sane during times of abuse or trauma. And I know I've been speaking for a little bit, but that's what I'm getting to. I'm like, Hannah, can you, in a roundabout way, without being too specific, explain a little bit about your past situation and how that affected you and what you're doing to help heal yourself moving forward?
Yeah, such an important topic, and so many rabbit holes that we could actually go down, and so many points that you made that are so important. There's a big line between self-responsibility and taking responsibility for others. I think, I don't like to use the word empath too openly, but like some people are more open, and even from my gene profile there's some interesting things there, like mirror neurons, and people like taking on other characteristics and being more people orientated. That's naturally going to happen, but from just a general point of view, I think some people, I guess it goes all the way back to our childhood, really, whatever we chose to believe as to whether we came in as souls to experience things or it's predetermined or whatever it is, that doesn't really matter. Facts are that, what happens in your childhood will set a template for a lot of things. I'll be open, so that I think that, to answer another question, is that to inspire other people with your story is to be open and to actually be vulnerable and put it out there. I have been hiding in this kind of little crash I've had, because for me, weight gain and trauma is shame, and it relates back to what I'm about to say. In my childhood, there were a couple of traumas, very common traumas, but enough that they indent your framework in those developmental years, which is, again, that can be a genetic part of your brain and a psychology and a nervous system kind of effect. I think that's why I love the whole tiered approach and why I love what I get to use from an objective perspective. And then, you know, like I grew up in an alcoholic family. That was again because my parents both had early deaths with their parents. So there was grief and trauma. You just get on with it in that generation. So that wasn't really dealt with. For me, being the more sensitive, I think, born genetic, and then having double traumas, I really, by the time I was a teenager, I was smoking and drinking and crazy. And I went to Alcoholics Anonymous at 16 years of age. Like I still have only met one other person who's gone at 18, you know. That is a whole nother story, but it brings back to the effects of my childhood traumas in my predispositions, which again, genetically, that's why I'm not talking about this to plug my business. I'm talking about it because it's actually my truth. I did the work and then the layers underneath still didn't make sense. And that's the weak liver pathways and inability to handle extra toxins. So that's going to happen with drinking, for example. So I was pretty early on, I got my butt kicked in life to grow up. I worked in an old people's home. I did care work that really pulled me into, I did that for 5 years from 16 and a half to 21. And, you know, then I went back out and drank in my 20s. I was actually suicidally depressed, but I also have, again, hormone predispositions that actually put those hormones in that direction. So for me, I grew up with a lot of just dysfunction and feeling like, why do I just feel not good? I was like depressed and up and down and all these things and sent to child guidance and all the behavioral stuff. So the message was there was something wrong with me. But the actual truth when I did my work was, well, no, there's nothing wrong with me. I had a lot of things that were external, were naturally fear reactions and coping mechanisms to that. So I've done a massive amount of work on myself anyway. But I think that, you know, coming into like relationships because of the dysfunction in my upbringing and viewing these things as normal, that's my template, right? So I don't know what I don't know. So while I've done a lot of work, again, I think it's just these layers and layers. And I think when you fast forward to getting to menopause and the age where the cortisol is lowering, you don't get the grace of actually dealing with shit anymore. Excuse my language, but B, you know, you've got wisdom and years under your belt, but you also have lots of bad experiences that you've AKA learned from, but you also just don't have the biology to cope with it anymore. Like when you're young and full of adrenaline, you can do anything. So I think there's a whole factor and we're aging and you know, we can reverse age and have this intention, but it's still graceful to become a next level woman. And every 10 years we kind of do that, don't we? You know, like the girl in her 20s is very different to the girl in her 30s and then 40s and 50s. So I think that, you know, basically for me, I think that anyone who's in a really grave situation, have hope, because hope and faith is what's going to pull you forward. Never lose the pilot light. No matter how low you go, know that things can change. This too shall pass, even though it might be a 3-year season or it's a really hard fight. You are worth the fight. And if someone's broken you down to think that you're not, on the other side of that flip side, when you rebuild and repair yourself, which is so actually available to you, I believe we create versions of ourselves. And for me, I had a version of me that was addicted, depressed, taking the trauma on and recreating self-abuse with my relationships. That was my pattern because of my layers underneath. You know, you always at any pivotal point have a chance to turn it all around. And I want women listening to this to know that and hear these words so strongly, that whatever life rafts you can grab to that just put you in a better flow towards the version of you that is 110% available, which is the stronger version, the version that won't take that, the one with the new boundaries. That it's just like building muscle. And that's why I love the physical analogies. It is like it takes pain and it takes growth and it takes rest and it takes recovery and it takes healing and it takes periodization and it takes good nutrition and foundations and it takes saying no to something to say yes to something else. You have every right to become a new version of you that has come through that Phoenix rising, and genuinely, like, it is available to you. So just never lose hope and faith and grab onto anyone, anything that you can that just puts you towards that version of you that doesn't have to put up with that again. And again, be grateful, like you said, for the lessons. And when I'm in the crap, it's so hard this time. I like usually do it really well. I'm like, thank you for when it's actually the worst. Thank you, and just see what shows up. So that's my holistic kind of answer to that question. We talk a lot on here, don't we?
Yeah. On board all that. I think as women learning to become more discerning, more trusting in ourselves. I mean, my huge awakening was at 40, along with other things, along with my first orgasm. Did you hear that? My first orgasm. That's in my book, my memoir, for anyone that's interested, sorry. It was a big thing to disclose, and I think by being authentic with each other and allowing people to hear some of our hurts and our pains and the things we've experienced. I wrote my whole memoir, My Shotgun Wedding and a Horny Goat, and I wanted to inject some humor in there as well, because the thing is, we can talk about all these heavy things, and our childhoods are interesting, aren't they? I think they hold more of the answers to why we choose the partners we choose without even realizing it subconsciously. And I thought I made a great choice. I mean, but I always say to myself, I could have made a worse choice. I'm still here today. And in fact, the choices I made after my husband that I was married to for 15 years, with for 17 years, it was my relationships that I had consecutively after that. They were very short. There was 2 more. My husband wasn't physically abusive, but the man after my husband was. And my relationships got worse before they got better. And I always say, if you don't learn the lesson, the universe will keep sending you more of the same until you finally get it, that you need to have rock solid boundaries. But I was proud of myself, because in discovering and learning myself and how I work emotionally, spiritually, and everything else, I had to go back to my spiritual roots in order to answer the questions I couldn't answer or make decisions. So when I was grounded and doing my yoga, my breath work, my meditation, it's not all phooey. It's really good to do, because without even realizing it, you're changing your whole chemical makeup, like from your cortisol and everything else. And when you're sitting in a place of peace, you can make better decisions. So I always get my women to go and do all that spiritual stuff. But back to the family, and when you were talking to me, something spoke to me and came to mind, and I'm like, no, because I think of you like my sister kind of, and you're talking to me about, family and trauma and alcohol and everything else. I became Miss Goody Two-Shoes to the point where I wasn't even enjoying my life. Oh no, can't do that, better not. I mean, I had a polygamous mother, 2 men, 2 fathers, running around having all this fun. And it was fun, it was great. 2 dads. One gave me this experience. One was spiritual. The other one was materialistic, had all the fun, all the bells and whistles. The other one was grounded. I literally was a person split completely down the middle. And I'm like, well, which one am I? So I tried spiritual, which was great. I married my husband, which was not spiritual at all. That went on the back burner. That was a frigging disaster. And I've come full circle back to the spiritual, and I feel a whole lot healthier for it. But what I want to say is, as empaths with our genetic DNA and coding that you've discussed, that I'm very similar to you, I absorbed my family stuff. And I had to become, my mum died when I was 16. So I became the mother to a 6-year-old, which was my sister. I had to get dressed up, get a job. This is not about me, but I just want to just fill you in a little bit on why this makes sense. Our genetic makeup and DNA and our coding and all the rest of it that you've explained to me put me into a situation of being in control all the time. So unlike you, I probably would have been better off having your experience, to be honest. I mean, I've learnt my experience. What I'm saying is I didn't even have any fun. I'm like, oh no, I didn't even drink alcohol. I didn't do anything at all. And I'm like, better not do that. That's going to end badly. So I became so meticulously the good girl that I've had to have my life experiences growing up after my husband, and boy, did I have them. First orgasm, dated a bikie, did this, did that, threw myself in here, roller derby in my 40s. If we ignore what our DNA and genetic coding is, it will come out in the end. It will come out. And I'm like, now I'm living my best life. So I'm like, I really love your program and things, because if we knew this earlier, we could help ourselves in all of these life situations that we're talking about and not take on board understand and read that energy that's coming from our parents. Go and get rid of that. Go and do some earthing, some grounding, rather than continuing to live a life that's putting us into addiction or drinking alcohol, because that's our little red flag. That's our warning. That's, hello, you're not living the way you're supposed to. Drinking in moderation, fine. But when we are not living our true self, and when we are not getting rid of other people's toxic energies and we're living with them, we like living with an narc, living with a sociopath. I became a skeleton. So you're taking on board their energies as well, which is creating even more havoc in the body. So that was a fabulous conversation. That was great. I think we've been talking about that for some time now on the podcast. I have to move on to, and I want to move on to, because I love this part of it. I mean, obviously, we're all mentors to each other. We all have people that we look up to, that we like to listen to. And I'm an author, as you know, and I just love books, and I'm trying to keep books alive. So with everyone on my podcast, I'm like, what amazing books have you read? I mean, sometimes it's hard to like pluck it out of thin air, but what are the books that really meant something to you, that kind of changed your life or gave you inspiration, or got you out of a hole? Or what books can you suggest to my listeners?
Yeah, such, again, a great question. Books were like my lifeblood I think I did a bit earlier than you, the big life change. That was my late 20s, 27, Saturn return. A lot came up for me, and that's when I conquered addiction. So probably for me, the biggest thing too in life that I've ever conquered is addiction. Like, I don't go to a fellowship now. I don't consider myself as a drinker. Sometimes my addiction comes out in fitness, and again, that's another coping thing. But to answer that, like, I want to say what I think sounds better, but there's a book that changed my life that's so old school, and it's called The Alan Carr Easy Way to Stop Smoking. And he's like this English guy, Anthony Hopkins endorses him, but it's all referral based, so they don't really market it. But it's about what it did. It actually looks at the perception of smoking and addiction, and it just changes your thinking about it. You smoke the whole way through, and then you just put the cigarette out at the end of the book. And for me, nicotine addiction was huge, probably worse than the drinking, because all day I was just getting dopamine hits. And no one who knows me now would think I smoked a pack a day from the 13 to 27. And that goes back to like what you said, like, I wasn't the good girl. I was like black hair, emo, goth, hate myself, abuse myself with alcohol. And yet still guys thought I was attractive, and yet I would wear these ugly clothes, and I wouldn't even wear a dress till I was like 22, because I did not want any sexual attention based on traumas. And, and so the addictions was huge. And that book just changed my life, because it changed how I thought. It started the paradigm of, I believe we are quantumly here to make a new identity. And so then it moved me on to quitting drinking. And I was like, well, I'm not an alcoholic. What if I can't drink? That's fine. I'll accept that. But what do I want to create? And I chose to create a version of me that was a happy non-drinker, because I thought that that's what I want to be, rather than what I don't want to be. And so that book is one of the life-changing methods, because he has a drinking book and all these things, but it was about the change in what you see and your perception, which really can change your results. But it brings me to the book I was going to say, because I thought it sounds better, but it also touched my life. The Joe Dispenza book, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, talking about how we get stuck in that chemical thought process of what we are thinking from our beliefs and actions, beliefs and thoughts and everything. And you know that from psychology, to then creating a chemical response in our body that creates a loop, and a thought for every feeling and a feeling for every thought. And it goes back to, like you said, if you can get into those parasympathetic things, you literally change your chemistry. And that's why I love genetics as well. So yeah, I'm into books that just look at unlooping your biology, or changing your perception to change your physiology and life. So yeah, that was a ramble as well, but they're my two favorite books ever.
Well, they sound fantastic. It's interesting when you speak to someone becomes like your sounding board, because then you learn about yourself when you're speaking to somebody else. Like, you have to get out there. You have to have these conversations. We have to hear them. As women, we're getting to that whole conversation about women not being nice to women. Women not being nice to women makes me go cold again. We're doing our own selves a disservice. And this is why I love these conversations. They just warm my heart and soul, because it's like, this is what we were created for. We were created to work together. And I feel that, I don't know why this is coming out right now. I think it's because we have such a good connection and we're talking this truth and we're having this conversation for others to hear. But I'm an advocate for women, but not just for women to support them from men that have, harmed them with domestic violence and stuff. I'm here to support women, to support women, to support women. And this is really important because I see a lot on social media and moving forward that successful women can lose friends. And women who have created something amazing and building businesses and things, they find their own little collective, fair enough. But we're not, a lot of us aren't really helping our sisters to rise or having these conversations that, this is refreshing. This is amazing. This is a great conversation that we're having today. And then we'll leave the show, we're feeling like high and positive and good and full of gratitude. And that's what I want to impart on my listeners. Just observe and learn and rediscover that we can be each other's friends, because it's quite volatile out there. And I just love that whole picking up a book. Obviously I'm an author, picking up that book and thinking back to a time in your life that should have been, it was devastating, it was difficult, it was hard, but books can actually change your perception of things. And I read The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle when I was going through my separation with my husband. It was more than that, it was a shit show. But I remember driving to the Sydney in, my beautiful Ferrari and all the rest of it and all this money. And it really didn't mean anything because my husband wasn't with me. He was cheating with one or two women. I remember sitting in the library of the Park Hyatt Hotel and reading his whole book. I didn't leave until I'd finished reading the whole entire book, like however many hours it took, 8 hours or something. And now when I look back at that experience, that book actually saved me, and other books as well, like Conversations with God and so many other books that I love and adore, and even poetry, like I started to write poetry. Sitting down and living in your creative self. You talk about the gym, you talk about the things that you love. Mine was running. I've got born to run on my foot. I literally ran like Mrs. Gump. I ran so hard, but that was my form of meditation. So with your DNA and your genetic coding and everything else, if people don't know, I'm encouraging them to reach out to you at the end of this podcast and work out what it is that is theirs. Because when you know and you catch on to that, then everything will fall into sync. What books suit me? What should I be doing? What's this? It's the answer, isn't it? It's the key to everything that we need to know, from relationships to, you know what? I'm a big spiritual person, so I'd like to marry this up with spirituality, which you do. So on certain days, I'm like, wearing black repulses me. On another day, I'm wearing black, or another day I'm wearing friggin' orange, or today I'm this. There's not one look for me, and I think that's our genetic code. I'm like, roller derby or off doing this. We all have different things we love, but mine are quite extreme and radical. Riding the big Harley Davidson motorbike, like being social in the group, but then sitting in my teepee. When you know yourself and when you awaken to this, you have to go through all these things, and you have to have the good toolkit to realize how can you live a happy and good life. And I do believe that you're doing that now. That doesn't mean we never have to do any work, but I'm excited to hear all about your story and where you're at now. And it gives other people hope, especially women who've suffered trauma at home. And then we have to, thank the divine and the universe for the lessons that we've learned and all the blessings in moving forward. So a big thing I just comes to mind is we aren't stuck. We have the capabilities to move through. We have the women and the spiritual mentors out there to help us do it, and you're one of them. And making others happy, being a good person, is the answer to our own happiness. Like if you're walking around being a dickhead or being really rude or you're being an abusive arsehole, they are the most unhappy people that exist. They might not look like it, but they are. And we're like, we have a genuine core happiness that we come back to in times of stress and abuse. I've always said I would rather be the abused than the abuser, which is a big thing to say, but then I know that I always come from a place of love and I'm not self-hating on myself, and I can connect with amazing people and women like you because I'm coming from a place of love. The universe is handing me all the manifestations. We didn't even touch on that, maybe in a later podcast, all the manifestations and all the things that we're trying to create in our goals in our life. The universe loves the resonance of goodness. It's like the cord that goes out and pulls everything to you. Be patient, trust the process, be a good person, and all these amazing things will come back to you. So in closing today, I think we've spoken for about roughly about an hour, I think. In closing, before I say goodbye, manifestations and everything I just touched on, have you got any response to that before we say goodbye today?
Yeah, so, and I want to make a point too that while I'm very biology and all of these science elements now, my number one biggest healing came from very deeply spiritual, like conversations with God and, you know, self-esteem prophecy. And like, I reckon I have every single spiritual book down in my garage that you could ever have read. The Power of Now was my first book of spiritual origin. In my, I think 2007, when I was like leaving real estate, and then I went on that big journey. So, you know, I'm very spiritually based, but I just feel like I've got this modality that's just a next level of spiritual. And even what we're doing with our company, I'm not allowed to say who we're doing something with, but it's someone quite well known in these kind of areas, and it just blows my mind. So it's got a definite spiritual element to that. But when it comes to, sorry, what was exactly, I rambled then. What did you want me to finish with? Sorry.
We're elaborating on where we come from spiritually, like how we connect with others, and being a good and wholesome person is encouraging. It works with the universe rather than against the universe. So this whole manifesting business becomes effortless. I mean, people ask me all the time, how do you manifest? What are you going to do? Like it's some kind of methodical action. Like, oh, you have to write this down, A, B, C, and D. You have to be here. You have to do it here. You have to do this. It has nothing to do with being methodical, writing things down, nothing. It's the thoughts in your head. It's the beliefs in your head. It's believing you're worthy of that you deserve that is yours, that you have it now. I think, you see, truth, I'm getting cold. That's what I'm excited about, because when I look at a spiritually whole person such as yourself, and I see your business and what you're doing, and then you just shared that something amazing is happening. When we are sisters to our sisters, when we are loving and loyal and kind and authentic and supporting our sisters and seriously joyful for them, like so happy for them, that's when our lives begin to give us the gifts, the goals, and the manifestations that we are working on ourselves. So I've put it out there, and it is so bloody amazing. I mean, we connected way back. I don't know how many years now, but that energetic vibration and that connection was perfect. Look, we haven't made a mistake. We haven't misjudged each other. We've been in that space and we've got that trust level automatically there. And I honestly have that around with everyone I interview. If you listen to the other podcasts and the guests, if I don't have that with a friend and the friendship changes and it's not temporary and it becomes toxic and no good, unless that person's going through something through no fault of their own and I'm trying to help them or whatever, I have to move on. I have to honor and respect myself in order to manifest. So I guess now I've spoken for a little bit longer, but I hope that gives you a little bit more clear of an idea in your response of manifesting and what it is and how we do it. We all have our own little ways. And so I guess that's the question when you're manifesting or when you're putting it out there, and I know these things are happening for you, what would be the way in which you work towards manifesting?
Sure. I think I had a moment of needing to eat, which is I'm a regular eater. So the blood sugar was dropping and I just got a little bit into the other flow. But yeah, and that's my kind of part of my answer. It's flow, like who we're being at the time, the energy that we're bringing, the belief systems that we've upgraded or that we need to upgrade, or, what we're becoming next, from where the version we were to the version we're, moving into. And I think that, again, it's that essence of who you are. And it goes back to that first thing you said, why do some people get it and some people don't? Like, I don't know why I got the alcoholic thing in my life, but I did. I feel so grateful for that, and so many people, like I watch them, their life just never changes, yet they're trying, So I think that, values is always one of my biggest things. When you align in values, you align to your personal flow, and that derives from your personal truth. I'm very big of John Demartini work where he talks about perceptions and polarities, and that there's two sides to the magnet, and we do need to look at, like there's just, you can't escape that in life. So I guess, when you center back to your values and you center yourself in your perceptions, that your flow taps into the divine. It taps into love, pure divinity, pure angelic flow. And that's from the negative experience to the positive experience, and the two sides of that magnet. So I think, when you are in full alignment, you're in integrity. And when you're in integrity, those true soul people flow into your life or out of your life, or they're just that. Look at, as we said, being thankful for these people in our life that has caused us perceived pain, and the blessing when we look back once we're through it, or even through it. And I think that's it. You just have to be in your center alignment. And when that is in truth, it's magic, like it's flow, that's manifestation. Like, I don't think, like, yes, you can manifest a thing, but again, if it's out of alignment, that polarity will be sitting there ready for you to learn that lesson. So if you balance your internal perceptions, you won't have to balance your external experiences. And that's my take on manifestation.
Oh, you give me little tears. Hannah, I think you're a beautiful soul, a beautiful person. I actually love your essence and what you're doing for humanity, how you're helping women and men. It is absolutely incredible. You're so humble, so authentic. You can't miss it. It's impossible to miss. And I can understand why there's some, vultures or creatures or animals out there who want to steal your light and take what you've got, because it's so potent and so beautifully angelic. That's probably the best way that I could. Honestly, I feel like I could cry just having that conversation with you, which is probably so far as one of my guests on my show, so really deep-rootedly authentic. And yeah, it just has just like a beautiful energy to it. So it's been great having you on the Hotbox today, and hopefully we've planted a few seeds and threw out a few feathers for women to gather and pick up and find your information and how to get in contact with you, so you can elaborate on more of what it is that you do and help some more souls. So I thank you. Love and light. Blessed be. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you so much. And it's been a mutual of feels my end as well. As you said, that amplification of sisters who have a genuine, passion, or not even passion, just a genuineness to help other women, share back our experiences, collaborate, amplify. Again, I've said oxytocin, but women, we are connection people. So connecting and being a tribe is so powerful. And, I think of you as an amazing older sister who looks younger than me. I'm all about the visuals.
Lies. Oh, lies. No, it's one that I can't take that. You know what? I try really hard to look fit and be the best I can be and be a good mentor to women over the age of 55 as a senior citizen. I'm not, you know what? I got to say it because it's funny. It's a bit of a joke, a bit like my memoir. Talk about the realities things. Don't take life too seriously. Fix the things that you need to fix, but have a good bloody laugh. Anyway, Hannah, thanks very much for being on the show. I'll talk to you later.
Cool. Are we done? Yeah. Can you hear me or? Oh, I can't hear you. Thank you.
See ya, Hannah. I'll talk to you over Instagram. Cheers, babe.